Writing MCQ is the easiest and quickest section to boost your score for the AP Lang. But if you don't know the essential knowledge, you fall for the incorrect answers. Today, practice an MCQ passage with me to see how you perform and check for gaps in your understanding. In particular, I'll break down the add, keep, delete sentence question, the most common question type on the writing MCQ, and I'll show you the mistakes that trip up a lot of students. Before we start, I want to acknowledge that starting from 2025, there are 4 choices for AP Lang MCQ instead of 5. But I still give my students the 5 answer choice versions to expose them to more incorrect choices. The more familiar you are with how College Board creates incorrect choices, the quicker you can spot them on the actual exam. Hey guys, welcome to or welcome back to CD's AP Cookies. I've studied the test inside out so you don't have to. Over the past 7 years, I've helped hundreds of international students score a 5 on AP Lang. If they can do it, you can do it too. Without further ado, let's get started. Here's the first paragraph and the first question. Students often ask me, should I answer the questions as I read or scan the passage first and then tackle the questions? My advice is to practice more MCQ passages and try both methods to see which works best for you. But pay attention to the phrasing of question 1. Contextualize the argument of the passage for the audience. That means I need to read the whole passage to grasp its argument. So I'd suggest either reading the full passage before tackling question 1 or marking it and coming back later. I'll leave it blank for now. Let's move on to question 2. I'll give you 30 seconds. You don't need to pause the video. When we encounter a should the writer add this sentence question, the first thing to consider is whether the sentence logically follows the previous sentence or logically precedes the next one. Sentences 4 and 5 say, why do schools start so early? The reasons are complex. So I would expect that what follows sentence 5 to be a reason for early start times. The proposed sentence. Many people believe that teenagers who complain about early start times are simply making excuses for their lack of discipline and poor time management. It doesn't explain why schools start early. So I anticipate that the correct answer would say something like, no, because it's irrelevant to the paragraph's topic. That immediately rules out A, B, and C because they all say yes. But neither D nor E addresses relevance directly. The sentence does present public opinion about teenagers, so many students go with E. However, the correct answer is D. Here's why E is wrong. To explain early start time, sentence 6 cites historical evidence, and sentences 7 and 8 offer social and logistical explanations. So while the passage does use some scientific evidence, it's inaccurate to say it focuses on scientific evidence. More importantly, E does not address the real problem with the sentence, its tone toward teenagers. As I explained in the first episode of this MCQ series, the most efficient approach isn't process of elimination. It's reading the question, anticipating what the correct answer should say based on the essential knowledge, and then searching for it. If you want to watch the first episode, click the link on the top right corner. When I read the proposed sentence, I found two problems. First, it does not directly explain why schools start early. Second, it casts teenagers in a negative light, framing them as undisciplined and making excuses. Bringing up these stereotypes may alienate teen readers or make them defensive, which undermines the passage's argument. The essential knowledge being tested here concerns the audience. Here's what the College Board says. Because audiences are unique and dynamic, writers must consider the perspectives, contexts, and needs of the intended audience when making choices of evidence, organization, and language in an argument. In question 2, you are being tested on whether you recognize that the sentence language could be offensive to a specific group of readers. Now, let's look at question 3. I'll give you 20 seconds. You don't need to pause the video. Pay attention to the key phrase in the question. Establish the credibility of the source. This is testing the essential knowledge about the credibility of evidence. I covered this in episode 5 of the AP Lang MCQ series. The correct answer is C. According to Dr. Judith Owens, Director of Sleep Medicine at Boston Children's Hospital. To establish credibility, you want 3 things: the researcher's full name, their area of expertise, and institutional affiliation. Choice C is the only one that provides all 3. Great, let's move on to question 4. I'll give you 20 seconds. You don't need to pause the video. For keep or delete questions, ask yourself, what does the underlying section do within the sentence and within the paragraph? Is it relevant to the topic or the claim of the paragraph? Within the sentence, the underlying text explains why bus scheduling is a constraint. Districts reuse buses across school levels to save money. Within the paragraph, it further explains the complex reasons behind early start times. So I'd expect the correct answer to say something like, keep it because it explains the reasoning behind the district's arrangement, or keep it because it provides a detailed explanation of early start times. Choice A matches what I expect. I also want to talk about choice B for a moment because many students get stuck between A and B. Choice B isn't wrong in the sense that the underlying portion does show the writer understands educational policy, but that is a secondary effect, not the primary purpose. The underlined test exists to explain why districts resist change, not to make the writer look knowledgeable. When two keep choices both seem reasonable, Pick the one that identifies the primary function of the text. Choice C says the sentence would be incomplete without it, but the sentence is grammatically complete without the underlying portion. So C is missing the mark. The correct answer is A. Great. Let's now look at question 5. I'll give you 30 seconds. You don't need to pause the video. Sentence 9, which is the topic sentence, says the scientific evidence, however, tells a different story. So we would be expecting that the argument of this paragraph builds on scientific evidence. Sentences 10 through 12 or deliver on that promise. Then sentence 13 drops in with I personally felt more alert. That's personal experience. That's anecdotal evidence. The paragraph is trying to make a scientific case, but sentence 13 breaks that pattern with a personal anecdote. So I'd expect the correct answer would be deleted because the anecdote is inconsistent with the paragraph's use of scientific evidence. And choice C matches my expectation. The anecdotal evidence weakens the paragraph's reliance on scientific research and expert testimony. Some students fall for choice D because they've been told by their high school teachers that they shouldn't use the word I in academic writing. But that is outdated advice. Personal anecdotes can be strong evidence, just not in this paragraph. The topic sentence specifically says the scientific evidence, however, tells a different story. To use non-scientific evidence would undermine the coherence of the paragraph. For keep or delete questions, it's helpful to look at what the topic sentence says and consider whether the sentence adds or subtracts from the paragraph's coherence. The question is testing you on the essential knowledge of coherence. Coherence occurs at different levels in a piece of writing. In a sentence, the idea in one clause logically links to an idea in the next. In a paragraph, the idea in one sentence logically links to an idea in the next. In a text, the ideas in one paragraph logically link to the ideas in the next. So for keep or delete questions, check the topic sentence. If the sentence in question doesn't serve what the topic sentence promises, it probably doesn't belong there. Great, let's look at question 6. I'll give you 25 seconds. You don't need to pause the video. The passage perspective is that biology determines teen sleep patterns, and this is settled science, not up for debate. So I need an adjective that reinforces certainty. Choice B, undeniable, does exactly that. Undeniable biological reality tells the reader. This is a fact, you cannot argue with it. Choice A, unfortunate, implies the biology is a problem, but the passage does not frame teen biology as the problem. It frames school schedules as the problem. Unfortunate puts the blame on the wrong thing. Choice C and E, controversial and debatable, directly contradict the passage position. Choice D, surprising, doesn't reinforce the argument. It suggests that the reader might not expect this, which isn't the point. This is about the essential knowledge on precise word choice. Precise word choice reduces confusion and may help the audience perceive the writer's perspective. Some word choice questions test you on which choice has the best academic tone, but this one asks you to pick the word that aligns with the writer's stance. The key is read the question carefully and understand what it's asking you to do. Now let's go back to question 1 because we've read the whole passage and can grasp its argument. I'll give you 15 seconds. You don't need to pause the video. The passage argues that schools should delay start times based on scientific evidence about adolescent sleep. With that in mind, choice B is the correct answer. Approximately 42% of public high schools start before 8 a.m. despite recommendations from health organizations. It gives us a specific statistic that frames the scope of the problem for the readers. It tells the audience this is not a small issue. Nearly half of high schools start too early. That contextualizes the argument. Okay, that's today's MCQ practice. And here's a fun fact that ties back to today's passage. In 2016, Seattle Public Schools pushed their high school start time from 7:50 to 8:45 a.m. A University of Washington study found that students slept 34 minutes more per night, and their median grades improved by 4.5%. A separate University of Minnesota study across 8 high schools in 3 different states found similar improvements in test scores, attendance, and even a 70% drop in teen car crashes in one school. So if your school starts too early, maybe you can be the one to change that. If you have other types of MCQ questions you've been struggling with, drop a comment below. And if you're struggling with essays and want personalized feedback, I offer essay review services. Check the description below for more details. Thanks for watching today. See you next class.